Good evening for once. It's quite late for from where we are. Early where Aaron is, of course. He's currently over there in Australia at the Women's World Cup. We're going to be chatting to him, which is taking away we had these in for other purposes during the week. We're back to normal now. It's just a general weekly chat. We will be talking all things Avenir Cup final later on in the program as well. We're going to be joined by Diarmuid Kearney, one of our reporters, who's going to talk to us. He's been previewing the US team. He's following their exploits over the course of the next few weeks. All of our reporters, of course, across a range of different teams on the platform over the next 4 to 5 weeks, because we just want to cover the games. We want to bring them all to you. We've been reporting live on all of the games, even the 3 and 2 a.m. Ones that, I'll be honest, not a whole pile of you are tuning into, but that's not really a surprise because of the timings of it and where you should be fast asleep in your bed. Someone who's been doing just that after a bit of jet lag is Aaron Clarke. Aaron, you're very welcome again back to the Final Whistle Women's Football Podcast for another look back at the World Cup. Welcome in.
Yeah, you say, falling asleep yesterday was probably the first example. It's been a lot of traveling the last week or so, and I think it's catching up a little bit, and it's nice just to have a sleep and wake up feeling fresh. It's weird because when you look at it over here, the games are on mad different times, like the time difference, and you see people still on social media waking up to watch some of these games just because their favourite players are playing in them. It's mad because it's women's football, and not many people would have thought a couple of years ago people would be waking up in the middle of the night to watch some women's games, and especially to see the coverage that the Women's World Cup is getting, to have all the games covered on Final Whistle as well is brilliant, because it means people will wake up in the morning and they'll know where to go, they'll know where to look for, and where they can find all the information they want.
Just to put people in perspective of what the time is there, it's 11 p.m. as we record this and as we go out live here on Final Whistle. Your neighbours are up and banging next door to you. Obviously, we can hear the development work going on in your vicinity. What time is it where you are?
It's just gone 8 o'clock in the morning. Up bright and early for me, because I'm out the door in about an hour's time. Off to speak to some of the Irish players as well, get a bit of reaction from the Ireland camp off the Thursday night's game, and sort of see where the mood is going into the game in Perth on Wednesday. So it's a busy time. Head to Perth tomorrow, sort of soaking a bit of the atmosphere. But yeah, a bit of noisy neighbours this morning. Been going since about 6:30 this morning, but it didn't really bother me because I was awake anyway.
Well, listen, let's maybe take a quick look back and look at our own lie of the land after that Irish game at the weekend. During the week, in terms of the Australia game, I suppose the dust is settled now. We're more than 24 hours out from the game, maybe 36 hours out from the game. And your thoughts now as you look back on the 90 minutes from an Ireland perspective?
It's difficult when you look back on it, because there's obviously a lot of what ifs. What if we'd have taken one of them chances? What if we didn't give the penalty away? I think the biggest overriding emotion is probably pride, with the fact of seeing so many Irish in Sydney. Like I was out at the ground at about 4 o'clock, 4:30 that day, and even from them, you've seen all the Irish out there, out in force, the numbers, the green, and when you look at it, it's just, I think the overriding emotion is probably pride. Yes, disappointing with the result, especially not to get something out of the game. Like, same thing again, it's sort of not necessarily, it's switching off for a moment, and I know we're going to talk about the penalty incident in itself, but there's more, how would you say, issues in the lead up to the penalty as well. It's not just the giving away the penalty, there's the build up to the play, the penalty. There's a couple of times Ireland maybe got lucky where they gave the ball away in silly positions, trying to take one touch too many, or trying to do something a little bit fancy and gave the ball away and nearly got punished. Would have liked to see, like, the options that were on the bench maybe being utilized a little bit more. I think if your last resort is just to throw Louise Quinn up top when you've got more subs available, it sort of tells me a little bit, does Vera trust the bench? I'm not so sure. Amber Barrett sort of warmed up a couple of times against France. Same thing, bib on, bib off, didn't come on. Same thing again last night.
Let's talk about Amber Barrett for a second, because I've seen this been thrown around by a lot of different people in the media, and while it's an easy out, she scored the goal that got us the World Cup. She's become a bit of a cult hero when it comes to the women's game in the country, but the reality is Amber Barrett played a full season with Potsdam in Germany this year, didn't score a single goal in, I think, something like 17 games. granted, been played out of position at right back in a lot of those games. The clamour for her not being even in the squad was probably justified based on her form at club level. For whatever reason, I know she's come out and said it's there was a difference of opinion with the manager and whatever, and I get that. But the reality is she hasn't been on form, and that goal in Hampden aside, which let's not forget is 9 months ago now.
Zambia was her first 2 goals since that.
Yeah.
Like, for me, the problem is Go on, I'll let you ask the question first.
My question really is that the type of form you want? Forget the personality, forget the name, but that profile of a player isn't exactly the type of person who is putting their hand up for selection in that situation when you need a goal to win a game.
Right, I'm going to flip it. Take away Denise O'Sullivan, take away Katie McCabe. Who else is scoring goals, or who else is putting in top-class performances week in, week out on winning sides for clubs? Not many. There's not many. The problem is, for me, the problem is, Breifne, is when you bring 4 forwards, 2 of them are already on the pitch. That's where the clamour sort of comes from. There's no other attacking options. It now goes back to, should she have brought Leanne Kearney? Leanne Kearney, no doubt, would have offered something completely different. But that's why the clamour started coming. Barrett is because Barrett's the only attacking option that's left that's not being used. One of your other attacking options is playing at right wing back. Katie McCabe's playing at left wing back. You're sort of clamoring yourself. I still think the 5 at the back doesn't really do Ireland any justice. It's the way they're set up, and it's going to be set up to be extremely negative, and it's going to set up to sort of rob a counter attack or rob a goal from what you call it, say rob a goal from a set play. And like, there was times you could see Katie McCabe's deliveries from corners were causing awful lots of trouble for Mackenzie Arnold. Megan Connolly's deliveries, a lot of them weren't great. There was one laid on from a corner that caused a lot of trouble, but most of the others weren't great and didn't really give Ireland an opportunity. And I think realistically going forward is that if they go out with the same sort of formation and the same sort of gameplay against Canada, it's going to be another extremely difficult game. You're sort of hoping to bite off scraps and bite off what Canada will give you, but can you really do it with 5 at the back? That's the question. And I think Karen Duggan sort of alluded to it in the Irish Times, is that Ireland are just way too set on this 5 at the back, and it's all well and good with 5 minutes to go, changing players and bringing on a defensive player and putting Louise Quinn further forward and going forward at the back. But if you're dealing with a couple of minutes to go, chasing the game, it doesn't look great. Yes, you'd like to say that from an Ireland point of view, we can go and attack more, but I think the final third's probably been the most disappointing thing. It's probably been the most disappointing thing for the year, not necessarily just for the opening game against the World Cup. I think it's been for the whole of 2023. We've sort of struggled in the final third.
Yeah, I just want to say before we go any further, if anyone's watching this and wants to contribute to the conversation, of course, you can drop a comment on the social platform you're watching us on, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. We will be able to bring your comment in and maybe react to your opinions on this as well. Did you think Ireland should have got more than a 1-0 defeat out of the game? Did they deserve a point possibly from the game, or maybe not? Maybe you think everything worked out the way it should. One of the things that's been fairly constant across all of the various Irish media, I'm not sure how much of it you've been able to see on the other side of the world, but has been this reality and this perception that the introduction of Abby Larkin and Lucy Quinn in the last 20 minutes gave us an impetus to go forward. Personally, I don't think it had much to do with the personnel that were on the pitch. I think if you had started with Abby Larkin and Lucy Quinn and let them off for the first 70 minutes, you would have got a very similar output from what we got from Shiva and Farrelly. And then if you had unleashed Shiva and Farrelly to actually go and attack the Aussies, I think you'd have seen something similar. I think more of it was down to game plan rather than the personnel. And I don't know if Larkin deserves all the credit she's getting, and Shiva in particular deserves all the criticism that she's gotten in the last 36 hours.
I'll start with the Shiva one. To be honest with you, I think Shiva's been made a bit of a scapegoat, and it's extremely unfair because you even seen her when she walked off the pitch. Marissa was in tears. You could see how much it meant to her. But for me, and I've seen a few people saying it, is that there's more, as I said already, there's more mistakes in the build-up to that penalty that could have been preventable, that could have prevented the ball from even getting to where it gets to. Yes, it's clumsy. The tackle is clumsy, but it's unfortunate, and I think the headlines are poor. You're right. I'm seeing a lot of it where it comes to Abby and Lucy, and you're right. If it had been the opposite way around with Sinead and Marissa coming off the bench, I think they would have given the same sort of impact. Yes, Abby did some good things, absolutely. Is it enough to start the game against Canada? Is it a big risk to start her against Canada? I think it probably is a big risk. To be honest, she's only 18. It's putting a lot of pressure on a young player. And then what happens if it doesn't work? Are we going to see the outcry from Irish media then coming to say, "Oh, Abby shouldn't have played. Oh, it's a big risk. It's a step too far." I think the problem here in this situation is the likes of Abby and Lucy. They're in a lose-lose situation in this, because people will say, yes, they made an impact, should they start? And then if it doesn't go their way, they'll be the ones to be clamoured, oh, maybe it wasn't the system, maybe it was the system, maybe it was Australia tiring a little bit. It's a difficult one, and I think from an Ireland viewpoint, yes, the last 20 minutes was probably a lot better, but at the end of the day, while it was better, the best effort we had was Louise Quinn head wide. You know, we didn't really have Mackenzie. We didn't really make Mackenzie Arnold make an awful lot of saves. Granted, she was under massive pressure from the set play delivery, but she managed to get them away, or Australia managed to get them away in the second phase. But there was no real clamour or no real massive efforts. I think probably the other best chance that we had was when Heather Payne released Katie McCabe, and she sort of just couldn't get the ball out of her feet to get the strike away. And like while we're talking about impacts that was being made, we still struggle to have shots on target, and I think that's the biggest thing that needs to change for the next game.
Yeah, possibly one of the best chances we had was early on. I think a lovely little move on the break from Denise O'Sullivan to Katie McCabe, and she put a ball into Ciara Caruso that Caruso just couldn't get on the end of, and it got cleared, unfortunately. But listen, I don't think we deserved anything more than what we got in the game. I think on the balance of play, Australia were by far and away the better side. We did pile the pressure on for the last 20 minutes. But as you said, it was deliveries from McCabe's corners that were aimed at the goalkeeper, which is not a great game plan. I just felt the whole approach and was just naive. And we didn't have a plan B. Louise Quinn, as you mentioned, seeing Louise Quinn out in the right wing. Now, I've worked with Louise. I've coached her in the past. I would never have put her in the right wing. We talk about attacking options. Anya Gorman on the bench for me. I know she's down listed as a defender in the Irish squad and has been for the best part of a decade, but the girl has scored nearly twice as many goals as anybody else in the Women's National League, considering she hasn't played in every season with a sojourn in Doncaster early on in the league's existence. That's pretty impressive, you know. And if you're looking for a goal, it's Anya Gorman I'd be looking to spring from the bench, or an Amber Barrett, regardless of how her form was coming into the tournament at club level. But Louise Quinn is not an option up front. I've said it from the start when they did it. And it's not the first time. We've seen this probably half a dozen times when we're chasing results. It hasn't worked in any of those games against arguably inferior opposition. Why is it going to work against an Aussie team that just seemed to be able to soak up everything we threw at them in the air?
Very valid point. You look at when Ireland went on the run of 7 defeats in a row against the higher nations. Every game, Louise Quinn was thrown up top towards the end. I don't think she was probably thrown on the right wing. I think that was more just of a situation that the way she ended up at that stage. But like when you're throwing her up top, and that to me that says I don't trust the players that I have on the bench to come on and get me in it, to get an impact in, and potentially get me a draw. And that's probably the most disappointing thing, because it's something that we maybe talked about a little bit in the build up to the World Cup, is how many players would she use during the World Cup. And I think this might have given us an evidence that there might be maybe one other player depending on situation, or two other players depending on situation, that may see game time in the 3 games. Vera sort of set her stall out quite early on, because you have 5 subs and she didn't trust any of the others to come on. And that's my opinion, to get an impact, because otherwise you would have brought these sort of players on, especially if you're chasing a result. Like, granted, Louise Quinn up top, but how many actual deliveries did they get into Louise when she was up top? They didn't get the ball to her feet and get her to hold up the ball and try and get people off her. It was sort of a case of she went up top, but there was no actual game plan as to what they were going to do and how they were going to utilise Louise either. That was the biggest problem. Yeah,
I 100% agree with you. Talk to me about the Aussies for a minute. Of course, we haven't mentioned the fact that Sam Kerr missed the game and will miss the Nigeria game as well through injury. I'm guessing, depending on how results go, may even potentially be rested for the Canada game if Australia already guaranteed a passage through at that stage. Your thoughts on how the Aussies did? I was quite impressed with them in places. I thought Ellie Carpenter did well. The goalkeeper didn't have a whole pile to do, but the end she did was fairly solid. But some really impressive work from some of their players through the 90 minutes.
Yeah, I'll start with the Sam Kerr one. So we were at the press conference today before Sam Kerr actually done the press conference. It didn't look to be an issue with her. There was nothing said, and Tony Gustafsson started to come out after it and was like, "Yeah, we completely lied to the media. We knew before it happened that morning in Brisbane." And like to even bring Sam Kerr up was to the press conference knowing she's not going to play. When you look back on it and you sort of think when she was asked about the somersaults and she sort of said, maybe hopefully if I score later in the tournament, it's probably something you could have read into it to say, okay, maybe Sam Kerr isn't going to be fit. But from an Australia viewpoint, yeah, they've done a lot of good things. I think for them, the Ireland game was always going to be the hardest game in the group for them because of the pressure. Opening day in front of a 75,000 seat sellout, like it was always going to be a massive pressure for them. And I think for them, the game was just about winning. They knew what way Ireland were going to play. They were just going to have to come and try and break Ireland down and try and get to Ireland. And the only thing you will say is when the penalty came, they were piling on the pressure at that stage. They were pushing forward. They were trying to get the goal, and you could see that a lot of things, the passages they were trying, a lot of them were working quite well. Like for Australia, they'll be extremely happy just to walk away with a 1-0 win, knowing Nigeria is next. And a win against Nigeria would see them guarantee their place into the next round. And I think for them to have that done with a game to spare, you're right in what you're saying. Will they play Sam Kerr against Canada? I think they will. I think they will if she's fit. For the simple fact of the matter is that you'd want to top that group, not finish second, because if you finish second, there's a high probability that you play England in the last 16. And from an Australia viewpoint, I think they'd want to avoid England if at all possible, especially so early on.
Let's talk about some of the other games that took place over the course of the first 2 days of action. 5 games down so far. That one, obviously, Ireland, Australia caught most of our viewers and listeners' attention. But the other game in the group played this morning in the early hours of the morning, Canada and Nigeria. Canada came into the game top seeds in the group, essentially. Top ranked team in the group, given Australia were seeded as the hosts. But Nigeria not given much of a hope in progressing out of this, and surprised everybody. Phenomenal penalty save by their goalkeeper just after half time. Very clear penalty given by VAR, but no doubt about it. And Christine Sinclair unable to find the net. A fabulous save from the keeper. I'm not sure how much of the game you would have caught yourself.
I was traveling during the game. I only seen bits, but I seen the penalty save. But for me, the one thing I will say about Nigeria, and the Ireland camp have sort of said this as well in the build up to the World Cup, is the fact of they're the best team in Africa, but their world ranking probably doesn't do them justice because of the fact that it costs an awful lot of money for sort of African teams to come and play in Europe and play against the best teams in the world. So they're sort of only playing against a lot of teams that are lower level to them in Africa and stuff like that. So their world ranking wouldn't really do them justice. They've some really, really, really good players. The fact that they'd held Canada to a draw, like for them, it gives them massive confidence going into that Australia game. And like even for in terms of Ireland, like we always said, Nigeria are never going to be a pushover in this group, and I think they've really shown that. And they've started the competitiveness of them. It's a testament to them, especially considering if you look at the stuff that was going on, like this, the two teams that played in this game. The build up to the World Cup has probably been poor for the both of them in terms of the off the field stuff. The Canada with the finances and the budget, would they get there? What was going to happen? You look back to the She Believes Cup earlier in the year, and the players were talking about potentially striking because there wasn't enough finances there for them even to potentially do pre-World Cup training camps and stuff like that. Nigeria sort of their pre-World Cup games were massively limited, so it's been a difficult one for them, and I think. Both sides, they'll have just been looking to kick off the World Cup. I expect both sides to take a step on from it. Canada, while they had a lot of chances, yes, they might rule that the penalty save, but they still have themselves in a good position. A draw is not the end of the world for them, and I think.
Well, on that, because I think actually they've put themselves in a bit of trouble now because. They're unlikely to get a result in the bit of turmoil they're in. They're unlikely to get a result out of the Australia game now. Australia will be big favourites for that. But they now go into a game against Ireland, who know that a draw probably sets Ireland up to go and compete with Nigeria and leapfrog Canada with a positive result against Nigeria. So I think that's got to be a concern for Bev Priestley now at this stage.
Actually, when you think of it like that, especially if you look at the way things are going, it could, if the Ireland game isn't a victory. See, the thing for them is if they were to get a draw against Ireland, obviously going into the last game with 2 points, yeah, you're right. It could be a bit of a who's who. Then they'd have to get a result against Australia. But the only thing is, though, for example, if Australia were to beat Nigeria and Ireland were to draw with Canada, would Australia then rest a lot of players in the last game, knowing that 6 points top of the table is already assured? That's the other question that you've got to ask. And like,
I don't know. I think if you get a chance to knock a team like Canada that have players spread across the world at the top level, I think I'd prefer to eliminate a Canada than eliminate an Ireland or a Nigeria. You'd fancy your chances against Ireland or Nigeria in a potential quarterfinal or semi-final matchup if it was to happen down the line, rather than having to face a Canada with a Christine Sinclair, Jordan Hetmo at the up front. She was impressive, I thought, today as well for Canada. And I think I'd want rid of Canada ASAP.
I love your ruthlessness. And in fairness, you're right. And I think from an Ireland viewpoint, maybe this is why Ireland sort of like you look for even speaking to the players after the game, they were still in high spirits. And I suspect this morning when we speak to them again, they'll be even in more high spirits, because the result yesterday is probably the ideal result from an Irish viewpoint, is the fact that they're not going to Perth with Canada already on 3 points. They now go knowing if they get something out of that game, it will come down to the last game against Nigeria. And I think that's probably the biggest thing from an Irish viewpoint. But then again, Nigeria, what sort of performance are they going to put in against Australia? That's the next question you got to ask, is will Australia be too strong for them? They should be too strong for them, but if Nigeria can right their luck a little bit, there's a potential that Nigeria could get something out of that game, and then we're sort of looking into the last round of games with a lot still to play for. And I think in terms of this group, while it's being billed as the group of death, it could be a group that potentially could go all the way, and depending on the results in the next game. And like from a Canada viewpoint, the more I actually think of it, it probably is a massive rude missed opportunity with the penalty as well, because it probably would have taken an awful lot of pressure off them, as you say, Gareth, because it's a busy Perth.
I'm going to make a bit of a bold prediction in our group. I think Ireland could qualify out of the group on 2 points. I think Ireland will struggle to score against both Canada, Nigeria. We might get a 1-1 draw in one game, a 0-0 draw in the other, and the other two teams will be beaten by more by Australia than we were, and we could get through with a negative goal difference on 2 points and face England in the last 16. I said it now. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. I'd love to see us pick up a win and make it a little bit more comfortable, but I think Ireland are going to get through, and I think we could do it on 2 points in what would not be a particularly impressive campaign. I think if we go at the Canadians and the Nigerians in the next two games, I think we could beat both. I think the 6 points there for us. I think we will not approach the games in those manner, though, based on what I've seen in the build-up, and I'd be concerned about how we are approaching the games. But that's just me. In terms of the other games, let's quickly run through some of them before we bring Diarmuid in. Diarmuid, of course, was watching the Spain-Costa Rica game for us earlier, and he's also going to preview the US side, who kickstart their campaign in just a couple of hours against I think it's Vietnam they're playing in a couple of weeks. All these teams, it gets very confusing to keep track of who's playing who, but Philippines and Switzerland blew them away pretty much in the end. Philippines fielding a team completely consisting of players not born in the Philippines, all born to various diaspora. I think 8 in the US. One, Angela Beard, had a couple of experiences for Australia, including one against Ireland back in Tallaght Stadium 2 years ago. Probably their strongest player, to be fair to her, Angela Beard. But Philippines didn't really have what it took to up against Switzerland. 2-0 winners in the end, although they probably should have scored more. Not a great result from the Swiss in the end of things. And Spain, we might bring Diarmuid in before we get to that. Let's hear quickly your thoughts on the Philippines-Switzerland game.
Just first off, I'm not surprised to see the Philippines doing what they've done in terms of the players not born in the country, because when you look back, even when Ireland played them in the friendly before Ireland went to Georgia last year, they weren't the great side. I probably should have put them to the sword. But from a Switzerland viewpoint, probably should have scored at least 5 or 6 goals and should have won a lot more comfortably. The problem is it's the first game of the World Cup is always going to be difficult, and I think that's where we'll sort of see a few things. But like when we speak to Diarmuid, like there's some games when you look at the opening game of the World Cup where some teams might put others to the slaughter. But I think from a Switzerland viewpoint, it's just about starting that campaign off with a good positive 3 points. Maybe that Philippine side are a little bit better considering some of the players that they do have, but I can't see them really troubling in the group at all.
Another impressive penalty, of course. That has been one system. One thing I've noticed over the first couple of games, first 4 games, penalty in each one of them as well. Let's bring Diarmuid in. He's been sitting patiently in the background there, listening to us yabber on and on about different games. Diarmuid, you picked up the Spain-Costa Rica game today. I know you were kind of keeping an eye on that. What do you think about it from a football point of view? Spain much better than Costa Rica?
Yeah, I suppose Spain were, look, it was a fairly close game, and then, you know, a ball goes into the box, it goes in off of a Costa Rican defender, and it goes into the net, and Spain go 1-0 up, probably against the run of play. You know, they had the chances, they had a better share of the possession, and then 6 minutes later, it's 3-0. Out of nowhere, Spain take a 3-0 lead, and then for the rest of the game, they're knocking on the door, they're trying to create chances, they're passing it around. Like, they looked a team with pure confidence against Costa Rica. They looked strong. They were probably one of the tournament favorites going in, someone that you would see fancy to go towards the semi-final or even make a final of this Women's World Cup. A 3-0 win in your opening group game is definitely something you will take. Plenty positives. I guess they will have a few negatives. Maybe they should feel that they dominated the game a bit more, maybe scored a few more goals, missed a couple of chances. But look, it's 3-0 win, dominant as far as they're concerned, and you know they'll be hopeful now of moving on and topping that group.
Yeah, but just on that, Spain's best player and probably one of the best players in the world, Alexia Putellas, coming off the bench only for 13 minutes. Is that a sign of maybe Spain realising that they didn't need to use all the big guns in the opening day?
Look, I suppose, you know, I guess with Costa Rica, were they seeing Costa Rica as the minnows and that they should get the result? Probably. You know, was she nursing an injury? Was she maybe not 100% fit? Again, that could be the question. Look, she came on in the 13 or so minutes that she was on the pitch. She looked very impressive. Could have had a goal for herself as well. She had a great chance toward the end of it. And look, I suppose there will be games. I know you were obviously talking about, you know, Nigeria and Canada, what way we could see Ireland moving their squad for those games. I guess taking on Costa Rica, Spain might say, look, we want to give some players minutes, make a couple of substitutions, give players, so try and get as much game time, because, you know, it is going to be a long tournament, especially if Spain are to be considering themselves a team that should be going into semi-finals or even the final. You have to give players and try and give them their chance. But look, they gave her the chance. They were up 3-0 at that stage. Give her 12, 13 minutes and she might start the next day.
Yeah, in terms of that group, of course, Zambia and Japan, the other two teams in there. Can either of them challenge Spain for that top spot? I know we haven't seen them yet. We've seen
Zambia in the build-up. Like, you look at Zambia's build-up. They were close against Ireland, drew at Switzerland, and beat Germany in the build-up. The Zambia front three are electric. I wouldn't be surprised to see Zambia causing an awful lot of trouble in this group. Yes, probably Japan are probably favourites to be thereabouts with Spain for the top two, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zambia put it massively up to Japan and put it up to the other sides in the group.
How important is this game, Aaron, in your opinion, at 8 o'clock Irish time this morning? I say tomorrow morning in Irish time, Zambia, Japan. Could that be key to both sides' progression chances out of that Group C or Group D? I think Group C.
I think so. Yes, I think Spain will top the group. So I think the winners of these two teams will finish second. But like, I was just really, really impressed with Zambia in the build up to the World Cup, and I think they'll grow even more from it. Like, as I did say, the front three again caused Ireland massive problems, caused Switzerland massive problems, caused Germany massive problems, and I think for them, the African sides are very, very underrated. Japan, if Japan can get through this game with 3 points. They'll beat Costa Rica, and I think the Spain game for them will decide who finishes top. And like, it's not an easy group. A lot of people probably would have said when the draw is made, Zambia will probably finish third or fourth. But I think they're coming into this World Cup right bang on form, and they'll give Japan a good game.
Two of the teams that get their campaign started today in your world, Aaron, but tomorrow in ours, the US, and that's going to get confusing the whole way through this tournament. But because technically it's tomorrow where you are, we're speaking to you in the future. But England get their campaign underway tomorrow. They face they're playing a Haiti a game they should be expected to win. That game kicks off at 10:30 a.m. I'd expect a reasonably big Irish audience to be watching that purely.
It's only down the road for me.
Are you going to go to the game? Did you get tickets?
I don't have tickets yet, but I may end up going to it. I'm going to watch a different sport first in the afternoon, so I may end up cross city straight after to catch the England Haiti game.
Different sport now. That's you can't make a comment like that and not tell us more about what you're up to. Tiddlywinks.
I'm off to watch the AFL. Brisbane Lions are playing Geelong at 4:30 in the Gabba, so I'm off to watch a bit of the Lions, and then I'm hoping to, depending what time I get out there, I might just grab some cheap tickets and head over and watch the England game.
After your feline exploits between the Lions and the Cats, I like it. In terms of the game, though, and you talked about cheap tickets. I watched one of the games this morning in particular. I'm trying to remember which one it was, possibly the Philippines and Switzerland, and definitely Nigeria and Canada. Very disappointing crowds. Now, probably still 15,000, 20,000. So I'm probably comparing it unfairly to what you'd expect in a men's tournament. But disappointing to see empty stadiums at this point. Like, these games have been fixed for 6 or 8 months. You would think at this point that the organizers would have judged the prices right to get crowds in, even if it's like Dunedin was the venue, I think, for the Canada game. Like, there's enough of a population around Dunedin that are sports mad. It's a university town.
Canada game was Melbourne. Was Canada game at Melbourne?
Oh, apologies. Yeah, no, it was Philippines. Switzerland was in Dunedin.
But Breifne tickets, the cheap tickets are like $10 for some of the cheap tickets. Like they've really, really, really priced the tickets very well for the World Cup, and that's probably the thing that you'll be a little bit surprised about. But then again, you look at the Qatar World Cup and the amount of empty seats that we're constantly seeing in Qatar as well. Like, is it a case that people are buying them? Because if I look on the FIFA ticket app, like, for example, the Ireland game in Perth, there's no tickets available. There's limited resale tickets for France Brazil in Brisbane as well. Like, it seems as though a lot of people have snapped up the tickets, whether they've changed their travel plans in the end and don't sort of make the venues. That could be part of it, and they don't put the tickets up for resale or things like that. Because to be honest with you, when you look at a lot of ticketing, the apps for tickets, a lot of tickets are probably a lot of main categories are probably gone for a lot of tickets.
Yeah, it's disappointing if people do buy them that they don't take them up on that. Diarmuid, we might move to you for a moment. Let's talk USA. Alex Morgan on her side out in action in just over 2 hours' time. Vietnam, hardly the biggest roadblock on their way to the knockout stages. But what's your thoughts? You've done a bit of research into this group and into this USA team.
Yeah, look, I guess this is the kind of game that you would expect the US to win. Their opening game, 4 years ago, their opening game was a 13-0 hammering of Thailand. Don't think we might see 13 goals, although for a 2:00 in the morning game here, definitely be an entertaining watch if we get a couple of goals in a game. We've only seen 3 being the max scored in a game so far, but I suppose it's a game with the likes of the Netherlands and their group. That's going to be a tough battle between the two of them to see who finishes top. I think the US just have enough to do it. But the Netherlands are looking well under new management. They've really, really shown their class. And you have the debutants, Portugal, as well. So we'll have to see what way they fare at the World Cup as well. But as far as tonight is concerned, or should I say tomorrow morning, Irish time, 2:00 in the morning, I think a lot of stuff going into it is that, Vietnam are the, they're the underdog, and, they have come out and said, there could be a wild card here. They could easily produce a shock. And if Vietnam were to beat a US team trying to go for a 3 in a row, that would be a monumental result already at this World Cup. Probably the most surprising result we've had is New Zealand winning the opening game against Norway. But don't know if many people saw that coming, but if the US don't get it done tonight, and they do have their fair share of injuries, and they're in a transition period where a lot of their older players, the likes of Megan Rapinoe, is going to be in her last World Cup. Is she going to get minutes every game? We'll have to wait and see. Tonight is probably the game where you see her potentially getting a good few minutes in the likes of Vietnam, depending on what way things go later on in the World Cup, what way they will utilize having her in their squad. But I can't see anything bar a US win tonight. They've got some terrific young players coming through the ranks, and Vietnam have only one player in their squad that's playing overseas. She's playing in Portugal at the moment. The rest of them are all home based. You look at the US, like the talent that they have at their arsenal. I know they have, the likes of, we mentioned Alex Morgan there, but they have so many other young players, young hungry players that want to win the World Cup, and I could genuinely see them producing a phenomenal result in the opening game.
Haven't mentioned Sophia Smith either. She's been setting the world alight for the last 6 to 12 months in that, both in Portland and also with the national team. I think she comes into this competition, not quite an unearthed talent, but definitely at the World Cup level as someone who could really light this tournament up. As you mentioned, we haven't seen a lot of goals. She's been generating and scoring goals for herself at will almost in the NWSL.
I think Sophia Smith is, the player that America is going to rely on the most. It's the player that all eyes are on. The players probably got the most pressure on their shoulders to perform. As I said, they're in that transition period. They're in a time where a lot of their older players are, they've a lot of players that are injured, players that now need to step up to the plate. And she seems to be the one, she was MVP last year and the youngest on record to win it. And, she's scoring goals for fun, as you mentioned there. And they need that firepower up front. When they have such big names missing in their squad, they need a player like her to step up to the plate, and I think she will do it. We'll see from the first game what way she plays, but I think every team that goes into playing America will know just how much of a threat she will bring, how much they're going to rely on her.
I think knowing about it and doing something about it are two very different things. Aaron, how much have you seen of Sophia? Has she impressed you?
I've seen a good bit of her. Has impressed me massively. The other person who's impressed me as well is young Trinity Rodman. Obviously, the surname speaks volume for itself. But the USA team, yes, they may be some of them coming towards the end of their careers, but they're still a wealth of class and a wealth of experience in that sort of team. Diarmuid talks about Megan Rapinoe, but the problem is Megan Rapinoe could go out and score a hat-trick today and then all of a sudden be nailed on and play every game for the USA. That's the way the USA work. Then you got the looks of Julie Ertz. She probably made her comeback against Ireland, having had a baby, and it's one of them that this sort of game will tell us nothing about the USA. The USA will come through this game flying colours. They'll probably slide through it at least 6 or 7-0, I'd say, and it'll be easy enough for them. And then you're sort of looking at then when they start to get the test. I think the Dutch game's the only game that they'll really get a test in the group. But they're a great side, and they're probably favourite. They'd be favourites for the World Cup and probably deserve to be favourites still, even though some of their players are getting a little bit more older. The good thing is they're not becoming as reliant on the likes of Morgan or the likes of Rapinoe anymore. Because for many years they were reliant on Carly Lloyd, players like that, and now they sort of have the opportunity that the youngsters are coming through. Even you look at them against Ireland when they played in April. Some of the younger players really stepped up for the USA in that sort of game, and I'd expect it again. Even with Becky Sauber and the captain being left out, they didn't take any risks. Where some countries might have just brought her and said, "Okay, let's see if she's fit. We'll then take a chance." They were like, "No, she's not fit. We're not making that chance." And I think the ruthlessness of the USA is probably something that'll stand to them massively. And I'm excited to see how they get on in this campaign.
You mentioned Morgan there briefly, and she's been a standout player for the US for as long as I can remember, probably looking at the last 10 or 15 years. She's at a different stage of her career now. She's at a different stage of her life. She's married. She's got different, I suppose, priorities, as we all do as we move from our teens to our 20s into our 30s. How much of an impact is she likely to have on this game? She's still probably the biggest household name at the World Cup coming into this competition, at least.
I think Diarmuid, I'm not sure about you, but I think she'll have a massive impact. I think she'll be the one that they'll look upon, obviously, as being captain, as a lot of leadership. I do think she'll be towards the front and foremost of the USA side. Will she start every game? Maybe not. Maybe she won't. But she'll definitely have a massive impact on and off the field when she does play, and her leadership is probably something that they probably value an awful lot, even when she isn't on the field. Like, even you look at from an Australian viewpoint, Sam Kerr wasn't on the field, but Sam Kerr was still leading a lot of the team talks and stuff like that, still leading a lot of the talks, because of our presence is so well valued in that side. And I'd say Alex Morgan is something very similar for the USA.
Yeah, I'm looking at, like, the American squad is obviously, you know, as you mentioned there, they're missing Sorburn. They're also missing Mallory Swanson, who would probably have been their main forward going into the World Cup. And I suppose the likes of the Morgan, you know, what way will Rapinoe be in the squad if she's not playing, as you mentioned there, with the way that Sam Kerr was yesterday? Is she going to be on the sideline, kind of giving that bit of inspiration, or, you know, is she going to start against Vietnam today, as you said, score 3 goals, and she's just in every squad? I know she's 38, but she's probably still definitely having the quality to perform and shine at the World Cup. And I know that they have the likes of Alyssa Thompson and Rodman and Smith, who are, you know, three of their young players who are coming through the ranks that can perform. But, you know, I definitely think America will be contenders. I don't think anyone can write them off. They will need to get the result today. But the biggest test, as you said, for them in this group will be the Netherlands. Once we see what way they get on against them, I think that might be the building blocks as to how far they could go at this World Cup.
2 other teams obviously face off at 1 p.m. Irish time on Saturday. That's Denmark and China. China kind of have always been thereabouts at Women's World Cups over the years. They've got to the latter stages a few times. They wouldn't be seen as a traditional football superpower in the men's game, but they definitely have been a power in the women's game. Can they compete, or have they kind of are they still at the level where they can potentially go to a semi-final or final of this competition, or even win the thing outright, Aaron?
It's difficult to say, because for me, you're looking at that group. I'm expecting, if I'm being honest, I'm expecting Denmark and England to come through that group. I'm not sure if China will get out of the group. I just think that Denmark side is very strong, with the likes of Pernille Harder, probably one of the world's best players. But then again, I expected an awful lot from Denmark when I watched Denmark in the Euros, and then watched them against Germany, and Germany blew them out the gate. So sometimes they can blow a bit hot and cold. I think from a China viewpoint, like, if China can get something in the Denmark game, I don't see China getting anything out of the England game. Whereas this could be another group that maybe 4 points decides the group, and it could be the case of who loses less to England and who beats Haiti by the most. That sort of gets them through. And if they can get through, obviously, if China can get through, they'd play the winners of the Irish group if they finish second. Or so realistically, then you're looking at potentially an Australia in the last 16, and it's not an easy feat. So it'll be difficult to see the second place team in this group sort of going very deep in the World Cup, in my opinion. But I think for China to have any hope of getting getting out of the group, they have to beat Denmark, and I'm not sure they will.
Yeah, no, there's 2 young players up top for Denmark that I think are worth keeping an eye on. I know you mentioned Pernille Harder. She's been around for a fair few years now with that Danish side. But for me, I think keep an eye on, I think she goes by Mille Giel Jensen. I'm not quite sure what her name is in obviously the Danish naming vernacular. I'm not quite sure, but she has been impressive so far for the same side as Denise O'Sullivan in that North Carolina Courage team. She's been in and out of that team, but she's scored a couple of goals, and I think she's been impressive in some of the WNLs or NWSL games I've seen, and also alongside her, Rikke Madsen could potentially be dangerous. She's also in that North Carolina Courage side, so at the same level, top of the league at the moment in the US, and arguably one of the best sides in the world in terms of club football. So interesting to see how she gets on as the competition progresses. But Harder guaranteed to be kind of the main focus of that attack. But I think those 2 youngsters around her potentially could have an impact in that Danish side, and I'd probably expect to see them come through.
With Nadine Nadam being out with an ACL injury as well, I think that you mentioned could become even more important to the Danish side in the World Cup, because You know, look what she's done when she's been playing. She's been playing in the NWSL with racing Louisiana. She's been with Man City before, so I think realistically, firepower for Denmark could be really important. I do think they could on their day push England all the way. Just whether they're good enough on the day to get the 3 points is the big question.
Racing Louisville, I think you meant to say there, but we won't.
Louisville, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, they do have a game actually starting in about 5 minutes against the Chicago Red Stars that I'm going to watch as soon as we finish up here in the Challenge Cup. It's kind of their version of the Avenir Cup. We're going to talk about that in just a couple of moments too. Quickly, I suppose, just to wrap up the World Cup conversation. We haven't seen Germany yet. We haven't seen Sweden yet, although we've seen them in recent years in Irish qualification campaigns. Anyone in particular you're really excited to see? Maybe the Spanish when they kind of they played today, but the Portuguese as well. Any of these teams that kind of you're looking forward to seeing when they get the ball rolling in their own campaigns in the coming days?
Obviously the Germans always impress you, and the fact that got to the European Championship final as well. Unlucky. Some would say not to win that final. Sweden were very good in Ireland's qualifying campaign, albeit Ireland did get the point in Gothenburg. But they'd be two that would stand out for me. I'm just intrigued to see how some of the minnows get on. I think the one, as I said earlier, Zambia is probably the one that I'm most intrigued to watch and see how they do, because I think they could surprise a lot of people in this World Cup. It's a strange World Cup because it's the first time that we have 32 teams as well for the Women's World Cup. So is it a case that as the World Cup goes on, we might see some bigger results? You're sort of hoping not. You're sort of hoping the smaller teams can stand up and really put a good fight up. I think the USA will set their stall out very well today, and the next couple of days will really tell us how good some teams are.
I'll probably regret asking this question 2 hours ahead of the US team, but are we seeing a new standard? You talked about the increase in the size of the competition to 32 teams. We've all seen those. I have memories of an Argentina side getting beaten 11-0 or potentially winning 11-0 against an Asian side some time ago in this competition. Like big double figure scores have happened. Now we're seeing teams like Costa Rica, like Switzerland, like the Philippines even, being within 2 or 3 goals. Are we seeing a more evening of the standard between the top sides at this level and, for want of a better word, the minnows in the fourth seeds in groups?
It's difficult to say. You'd like to say yes, but then again, funding and things like that and facilities and stuff like that sort of still play a massive part in it. The one thing we are starting to see is we're starting to see a lot more of the minnow teams, players starting to play with bigger clubs and get bigger opportunities in terms of club football. Are we seeing the gap closing? At the minute, probably not, but maybe in 4 years' time, we'll see that gap close an awful lot more because of the amount of players that are being picked up by better clubs and playing alongside better players. But it's difficult to say because of the fact that it's the first time we've seen a World Cup at 32 as well. So how do you compare it to the last World Cup? Because the last World Cup had a couple of minnows, and as we've seen with the USA result, the 13-0 in the last campaign, nobody wanted to see that again. You'd like to hope we are going to avoid some of them, but there's always a possibility that we could have 1 or 2 of them in the World Cup, and then we start asking the question, is the gap getting bigger? You'd like to hope not. And hopefully as the World Cup comes on, we'll see your question being answered where we see the gap is closing. That's the only hope that we are going to see.
Diarmuid, your thoughts? You're the one that brought up that demolishing of Thailand some time ago.
Yeah, like I suppose when you look at Ireland's group, I guess, Ireland would be probably the minnows as, the debutants, and getting that result against Australia, I guess, is probably a good result for them. And, I guess the Philippines result this morning, would they be considered, one of the minnows in their group? And I guess it's fairly close, but I guess, as you said, we're only a couple of games in. I guess it's still early doors in the competition. I guess will the game that I'll be watching later on, the US and Vietnam, be the game that we see the biggest victory to come from so far. Look, I'd say it's great to see
6 or 7 goals.
It's great to see the minnows coming in and trying to put it in, because I guess they don't have nothing to lose. They're coming out, they're playing in a World Cup. A lot of these teams are making their debuts at the World Cup. It's great for them. The buzz and the atmosphere that you get from it is great. I don't think they will want those results. You know, you look back at that game 4 years ago, Thailand don't want that record. You know, no one wants to look back at the history books and see you're probably one of the biggest defeats in the World Cup history. No one wants to be that person. I don't think Vietnam will go out, they'll play the US, they'll play without fear. They probably will have it in the back of their minds that they don't want an absolute drubbing to see. You know, I'm watching a game at 2:00 in the morning after watching FAI Cup games this evening. So it'd probably be interesting to see a 6 or 7-0 win. But look, I suppose from a Vietnam perspective,
can I flip the question?
Yeah.
Are we going to see a lot more? If we see a lot of closer results, is it because some of the minnow teams are playing more defensive and playing with 2 bank to 5? Is that going to be the case?
I don't think so. I think you look at the New Zealand game the other day. I don't think you could accuse New Zealand, who were the 4th seeds in that group. Oh no, they were the 1st seeds in that group, but they were playing against a team that were expected to beat them comfortably. I can't remember verbatim what was said on the RTE panel before the game, but Richie Sadlier 100% said that New Zealand had no chance of winning the game. Now, I'm not saying he didn't know what he was doing. I didn't disagree with him at all. And New Zealand came out and they played attacking football with a purpose from the first minute of the game to the 90th minute of the game, and they looked like they deserved that win. And I think it was exactly what we saw from Ireland in that last 20 minutes, where when we went at them, when we took the shackles off a little bit and let our players play, we created any amount of problems for Australia. And I think if we maintain that, I would rather see Ireland do that for 90 minutes against Nigeria and Canada and have a go and try and get out of the group by playing attacking football, forward passing, and looking at to get a attack going at every opportunity, and lose 2 or 3-0 in games, then just sit back and try and soak up that pressure and hit them on the break, because it wasn't pretty to watch. It was effective, but it definitely wasn't pretty to watch. And I think I'd prefer to see Ireland have a go and at least try and get out of the group with a positive attitude. We are running out of time, and I do want to talk about the Avenir Cup. Both of you have been at games or have been watching games in that competition here in Ireland over the last probably 4 to 5 weeks now at this stage. It's kind of been a bit of fresh air to the whole scene, with throwing up really new and interesting combinations of games that maybe haven't been seen before in this country, with the likes of Linfield and Galway, or Cliftonville and Sligo Rovers. And I suppose all of them come together on Sunday in the showgrounds. Cliftonville have reached the final from their side of the draw. Galway represent the other side of the draw. We've North versus South. We've got the kind of the dream final in a lot of respects. It's not a final that anybody would have picked or predicted at the start of the competition. But Aaron, I suppose I'll start with you. Happy with the way the competition has come in? Do you think this is going to be a good final on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it'll be a very, very, very competitive final. I think it'll be a very good game. It's probably from a South point of view, it's probably the team we maybe didn't expect to be in the final. From a North point of view, it's the sort of side you said, okay, they'd probably make the final considering their performances. But Galway have just grown massively throughout this competition, and they've taken it so seriously that they've put their best 11 out on every day, and it makes for a good spectacle. The fact that it's two sides who've been how to say been doing very well in their group. Like, you look, yes, I take away Cliftonville's draw against Sligo. Cliftonville had nothing to play for in that game. They were already through, so you can sort of imagine how going into that game, we are already through into the semi-final. But it's been 2 very, very good sides, and it'll be a very, very competitive game. The only question that I would like to know, and I think I know the answer, but it hasn't been confirmed, it's just that if it does finish level, I assume it goes straight to penalties and there's no extra time like the semi-finals as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game that goes all the way.
Diarmuid, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been very impressed with the competition. I think it was a great initiative to bring in, to give teams more competition to play in, give players that we mightn't see on a regular basis starting in the Women's Premier Division, for those teams the chance to shine at the level, and for the likes of just to single out Cork for an example, say that they could have easily fought for the chance to be in a final when their league form hasn't been great, that it gives a team like that the confidence to do it. And you look at Galway now, Galway have been phenomenal this year. You know, their first year, look, under the United umbrella, if you want to call it that. Phil Trill has done a phenomenal job, and I'd have to agree with Aaron when I say that the game on Sunday is probably going to go the distance. But we have another penalty shootout. Obviously, Galway have the advantage there from the last day. So it's all to play for. But it's been a great competition, and you know, a great chance of silverware for the teams on Sunday. And I guess, as you mentioned, it was the dream final in a way for these teams.
Yeah, of course. The game is live on LOI TV, and you'll be fortunate enough to have to listen to me for 90 minutes on the commentary of that game on Sunday afternoon. So my apologies in advance about that. You've only had me for 60 minutes tonight, gents. It's getting to that stage of the night. Your thoughts on the 4 games tomorrow? Are we looking at all the favourites progressing? USA, England, Denmark, and then could Zambia be the one that kind of upset the apple cart in terms of form or expectation?
Zambia for me is the only one that I'd see potentially causing any sort of upset. I think the other games would be comfortable enough. Darren saying that Zambia could come up just short against Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan win the game, maybe 1-0, but I think it will be close. The other 2 or 3 games will probably be comfortable enough.
And to finish up, I suppose, Jeremy, I might like to get your input on that as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much the same as Aaron there. I guess that one game between Zambia and Japan, you know, Japan are a former winner of the competition. They're no slouches in this competition. They have the experience. We have seen Zambia. I think that game is going to be close. Might even be a draw. There might even be a winner in that game. It's very, very tough to tell. But I guess the likes of, you know, for me, the US, England definitely will get the results, and I think Denmark will get their results as well. It's very hard to look past that, in fairness.
Yeah, I think it's a day for miracles. I think I'm predicting at least one surprise, because we've had 2 on the show tonight. You might not even have noticed it, but we've got a Kerry man and a Dublin man a week out from an All-Ireland final, and no one's mentioned it so far. So I figured, as the Leitrim man who knows nothing about All-Ireland finals, I would throw that one in the mix. We also had a Kerry man giving Cork credit, something you'll never ever see again in the history of Irish sport. Gents, it's been a pleasure as always. Aaron, enjoy the lovely weather in Brisbane if you can get out in the weather. Try and find the air conditioning. I'm sure even in the winter over there, it's still pretty baking during the day. What's the weather conditions like?
Yeah, it was quite warm. It was quite warm yesterday. It was up to like 23 degrees yesterday, so it'll be warm again today. Bit of sun cream will probably be needed as well. So can't complain. I will get out. I'm going to get out here shortly over to the Irish Media event, and then get exploring the city a little bit.
Okay, well, listen, enjoy your day, enjoy the city, and we'll catch up with you very, very soon. Diarmuid will be covering games on the platform over the weekend. Loads to come, both in the Women's World Cup, the Avenir Cup final, and plenty more across all the Gaelic games, and a bit of everything thrown in on FinalWhistle.ie over the next couple of days. Aaron, we did actually get one comment. We might as well bring that in. It's not actually that interesting, so we won't flash it up on the screen. But Oisin McGuinness, hello to you too. It's been a pleasure that you've joined us for the last little bit, and just for our accuracy, he did just say hello, so we're just saying hello back. Gents, it's just to show we are live. Oisin, you can take it from that. Aaron, happy Saturday. We haven't quite reached there yet. We tick in the next minute or so, or maybe just a few moments ago, and we will.
We're 8 minutes past 12 o'clock.
I know, I've lost track of time, but we haven't gone over the hour, and as Aaron knows,
it is getting very confusing with the time changes and everything.
Well, listen, America start in just under 2 hours. England just over 10 hours at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning Irish time. I know we'll be watching them on this platform. Join us or watch it on RTE Player or wherever you are following the Women's World Cup. It's been exciting so far. We've no doubt it's going to continue to throw up some fantastic games over the next couple of weeks. We'll be coming back to you in the next couple of days. We don't quite know schedules. We'll bring it to you as soon as we can, because Aaron is on a different time zone as us, so we kind of have to. It's either going to be early morning or late night like this, but we will hopefully have it for you on demand as you want it ahead of all of the games in the competition. Aaron, enjoy your day in Brisbane. We don't have any jealousy issues at all. I swear, 6 months of jealousy now, still going. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks a million, gents, for joining us.